Hello, welcome to my channel, Making Crafts. Today I am going to be making an ephemera holder, and I'm going to be using the Shabby Shades of Yellow collection, designed by Happiness and Crafting by G. Kerr. And this kit is full of different flowers and things in it that's yellow, and a lot of good yellow backgrounds. And so I have printed most of my pages double-sided, so I'm just going to flip them so you can see the different pages in the kit. And so there's a lot, like this page would be wonderful for journaling on, and then there's some decorative pages. So this one would be a good one just to use the pages as they are and the different ephemera in the kit, and just make yourself a journal just using the kit as it is. And you could use these as journaling cards, or you could make these, use these as pockets in your journal, as well as you could use these different tags and different things to make pockets. And you've got the belly bands. And so even the little butterfly here is yellow. So this is a very pretty kit. For today's project, I'm just going to be using mainly the sheets in this one, the pages that comes in the kit. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on the project. Okay, so I've gone ahead and prepared a few things ahead of time so you didn't have to see me cut it all out. And so first I'm going to work on the cover. And so for the cover, I needed a piece of paper that is 10, well actually this is 10.5 by 7 3/4, but it doesn't have, I'm not going to use the whole piece. So I just need a larger piece of paper, and I've printed on both sides of this one. And then for the cover, I have I've cut a piece of paper at 6 3/4 by 4 1/4, and I've cut 2 of those, the front and the back. And then I've also torn out a piece of book page that I want to use to decorate the front, along with a little piece from the kit. I've cut this out of one of the sheets, and I've just cut it so that it's going to decorate the front as well. But what I want to do first is I want this to be kind of thick but flexible, so I don't want to use cardstock on it. So I'm using 32-pound copy paper here, or premium paper I think is what it's called instead of copy paper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this paper to a book page. Let me see which way to turn it. And then I'm going to glue both cover pieces to a book page first, just to add a little bit more thickness to the cover. And so I'm just going to use my Fabri-Tac here to do this, because I am going to be sewing around it. So the Fabri-Tac will dry fast, and so hopefully it won't, I don't think it should gum up my needle. So then I'm going to just attach this on the page. And while that's drying, I will do the back piece. And in the background, I don't know if you can hear her, but my little Zoe, which is my little schnauzer, the youngest one, she is snoring again. She makes the loudest little noises when she's resting, but she is snoring. It's a beautiful day here. It is absolutely gorgeous outside. And so I took both the girls out and let them play in their play yard for a while, but then it got a little too warm, so I brought them back in. And so they're pretty exhausted from all that playing. So they are resting. But Zoe likes to lay over here behind me. And she's laying in a cool spot, and she is just snoring away. So you may hear her from time to time. Okay, so let me trim this out. And now Roxy has joined us. That's my other schnauzer, and she's the older one. She's 4 years old. And she has come in here. Since she heard me talking about Zoe, she decides she wanted to be some attention. So she has come in here, and she's sitting behind me as well, making a little noise. So you may hear both of them in the background. Other than that, there's not a lot of noise in the house today. The boys are out walking with their dad. It's just so gorgeous out. They went for a walk down to the creek, so they are, I'm sure, having a lot of fun. So now that we've got this cut out, it's just adding just a little bit of thickness, not a lot. I didn't want real heavy cardstock. I kind of want it to be flexible. I've just got a certain feel that I want it to be, and so I thought add it to that book page would help. So now I'm going to also add it to this page, and I've got to decide now. I think I want This is going to be the inside of the cover, so I just want to see where it's going to be so I can position this correctly. So maybe somewhere right here. And this is the front cover, and then the back cover. And I just want to leave just a little bitty gap in between it. And so there's just going to be a little gap there. I'm trying to think that before I add that, I do want to ink it. So let me get my ink out, because I think this paper is going to look gorgeous with the chocolate chip ink. And this is chocolate chip from Stampin' Up, and I've had this stamp pad for years, so I don't know if they still sell it or not. I haven't purchased any Stampin' Up in a long time. I used to go to Stampin' Up parties, and so I bought a lot of the supplies from Stampin' Up during those times, and so it's lasted me for years. Okay. I may have to replenish all my stamps, my stamp pads eventually, and I'll have to go looking and see, because this ink is really good. I do like it. So I'm just going to ink it, and if you can see in the camera there, it really just really looks good with this yellow, I think. That looks really good. So I'm going to do the same thing to this one. Just the edges real quick. And then we're going to glue these down to the paper. Kind of getting wrinkled. Let me see if I can hold it with something, so I don't want it to get all wrinkled up. I'm trying to see if I have any cardstock anywhere. Looking around, but I don't. So let me see if I can just finish it. This looks so pretty with this. When you ink it, it really makes that page pop. I love this little piece of paper anyway with the, I guess that's sunflowers on it. And they're just gorgeous. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to leave a small gap, and I do want to look again. I've done forgotten. So I want that to be on the inside of my cover. So I'm just going to glue that there. So let me add that one first. And this bright paper just reminds me of summertime and spring, and just, it's a very sunny, happy paper. So if you're needing to use a paper to just, if you're needing something to brighten your week up or your day up, using this paper I think really is bright and beautiful. It's a good way to have a cheery, to make a cheery project, something very happy. Got a little ink there. Okay, so then you're just going to leave a little small gap in between them, just kind of like that. And so the back inside cover is just going to have to be wherever this falls. I can't be picky with that, since the you know, they got to be so close together, there's no way to do that, so that's okay, because the whole piece is pretty anyway, so I don't think it's going to be a problem. Just want to line those up about the same at the top and at the bottom. Just press that down. And like I said, I'm going to stitch around it in a few minutes. So, just want to trim it out. And then I can ink the other side. There we go. I may have got off just a little there. I think it'll be okay. I actually may have cut that one just off a little. Let me see there. I may want to just go back and trim just a little. I think that's what I'll do. I'm just going to take my paper trimmer and just trim it across and then re-ink it. Since it's off just a little, it's not that big a deal. It's not anything major. So I'm just going to take and just trim it just a little right there, since I had they did not line up perfectly. They lined up really good at the top, but not at the bottom. So, I do have a little piece of paper left over right here though, that somehow I missed. There we go. So let's just go back before we forget and just re-ink that. And I can add some more ink to it in a little bit too. This is, I'm going to ink these edges since they're looking white. I don't want white edges. There we go. Okay. So now we have that, and let's go ahead and decorate the cover while we're working on it. So I'm just going to ink around the book page that I'm using to frame out. Let me lay this on something here, and I can just, so don't totally destroy that book page, just add an ink to it. I think this is going to be a neat, nice little project and a nice little gift to give a friend. So I'm just going to add that there like that. Make sure I got it back in the camera like that. Okay, so let me just add that to the page. And I'm going to continue to use this because I am going to actually, I'm going to not stitch around this one. I'm going to stitch around the one that goes on top of it. So I need to do that real quick before I add it. So let me just center this up first. And then, let's see, okay. So let's take, and let me sew. I gotta think though, do I want to use brown thread or just white thread on this to sew? And I think I'm going to use white. So let me get my sewing machine. Let me get my sewing machine and then I will sew this up. Okay, so I'm going to be using my Baby Lock. It says Be Genuine Collection, and I will link below where I got my sewing machine and which one I'm using. And so I'm just going to, let me practice on this because I just changed the thread, and so I always like to practice on a scrap piece to make sure I've got everything set up right, and just take a look at it and see that it is working right. And it is, I do believe. So now, yes, so now we can go ahead and get started on stitching this one. So I'm just going to stitch around. I want to start right here. Actually, I'm going to start right on the side. And I'm sorry for that alarm. I need to figure out how to turn the alarm off on this. I'm using my computer to film this part, and so I do not know how to turn the alarms off on it yet. So it's a new computer. So I'm starting out with a straight stitch. Let me push my foot back. I just set this up this morning and I'm having a little bit of time. Just having to get it set up like it works right. Okay, so I'm going to use a straight stitch down this side. And I'm using a 3 inch, excuse me, I said that wrong. I'm using a stitch length of 3. Oops. I'm using a stitch length of 3, and I'm just using a straight stitch, and then I'm going to zigzag stitch when I go down this side. I'm just going to stop about right there. I'm going to switch it over to a zigzag. And then I'm going to just stitch down. And then I'm just going to switch back to the straight stitch. And let's see, I'm just making sure everything looks okay. And then just finish stitching around. And we're going to meet right back where we started off, and I'm just going to back stitch into that. And there, I have it. I don't want to tear it, so I'm going to be real gentle when I pull it out. Just going to trim the stitches. We'll trim the extra threads. I'm going to leave some on there. I'm going to try to figure out where the camera is on here. So I just leave some hanging. Okay, and so then, now I'm just going to, I think I'm going to go ahead while I'm here, and I'm going to stitch around the cover of my ephemera holder. And so I'm just going to, I think I'm just going to do a straight stitch. I'm trying to think if I want to do a zigzag over the edge or just a straight stitch around the cover. I think it's just going to be a straight stitch. So I'm just going to, okay, so I'm going to be putting fabric on just along the binding here. So I'm not going to stitch there yet because I'm going to stitch when I put the fabric on. So I'm just going to stitch around 3 sides on each of the cover and on the back cover, the front cover and the back cover. I think that this will add to this cover. Just the stitching will give it just a little bit more something to it. So I thought it looked good on it. Even though I'm using white thread, it doesn't show up as much as brown would have. I consider using brown, but I really like the white on this bright yellow. So I don't know if you can see. There you go. Let me do the, so now I'm going to do the back cover as well. So now we're back to adding we're going to add this to the cover, but first I want to ink around it because I really think it helps it to stand out. And if you don't have a sewing machine, if you don't like sewing paper, if you don't like the look of sewing paper, any of those, don't worry about it. You can still make this project 100%, make it without the stitching. I'm just doing the stitching for decorative purposes. The stitching is not what's holding it together, and you do not have to have it. And if you didn't have a sewing machine, and before I got my sewing machine, I actually ordered a stamp set that I think it's from Bo Bunny, and I don't have it handy right now to show you, but it is stitches. So if you just search, you know, rubber stamps or clear stamps, Bo Bunny's clear stamps, and if you just search those and search for stitches, you'll find some. There's all kinds of companies that make them, and you can just stamp around the edges to get your stitches. And so that's really neat too. And sometimes if I don't want to sew something, then I can do that as well, and I do that. Okay, so we're just going to add this to the front now. And I'm trying to decide which glue I want to use. I think I'll keep going with Fabri-Tac since that's what I've been using. So I'm just going to glue this down to the cover. I don't always stitch all my projects. I love the look of stitching, but a lot of times I'm too lazy to get the sewing machine out. I just prefer to just glue and go on. So, but I really want to get to sewing more. I bought this sewing machine specifically for sewing paper. I have another sewing machine that I just didn't want to mess up. It's more expensive, and I just didn't want to mess it up sewing paper just in case. I don't know if it would mess up your machine sewing paper. So I got this one, and I think this one has been great so far. I guess I've had it for since last November, December, somewhere around there. And so I've used it that many months, and it's been good. I haven't used it long enough to tell you how long it will last. Okay. We're not going to add the fabric yet because I want to put the book together and then add the fabric, and you'll see when I get done why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. Okay, so now I have chosen, let's see here, I've got to figure out how many pages did I decide to do. I think I'm doing 2 sheets here, yes. And so what I want to do is just fold each one of them in half. And let me get my glue off my fingers. So let's just fold them in half. Actually, I don't want to fold them in half yet. Well, yes, I do. I go ahead and fold them in half, and then we'll open them back up so that I know where. And the reason I'm folding them half now is so I know where the center is. So when I add my little pockets, I don't cover up. I don't get into the center where it's supposed to fold. Okay. So let me see here. have those pages. And so when you get through with this, you'll have, actually this is supposed to go this way. Let me see if that's going to be okay. Yes. So it's going to, what we're going to do is, I am going to be attaching the pages together so that they're double thickness. But before I do that, I want to add the pockets to it. So I'm going to lay my cover aside for now, and I am going to work on adding pockets to my pages. And let me see if the ones, make sure these pages are going to line up good together. Make sure everything's cut good. So this one will, and this one, these two match each other. Okay, yeah, I may have to trim a little when I glue them. Okay, so what I want to do first, I've gone ahead and I'm using my, this is just acetate that's supposed to go around cakes, and I will link it below too if I can find it. I bought this off of Amazon, and so it is almost 4 1/4. Let's see. Well, it's closer. It's 4 inches, and then you've got the whole roll. So what I've done is I've taken the 4 inches like this, and then I've just cut at 2 inches, and then at 3 inches, and that's the different size pockets that I'm going to be using. And then I also did cut some at 1 1/2, and I will make some pockets that size. So I'm going to start out first with just the sheet, not double-sided, not with the one glued to the back yet, and we're just going to start adding our pockets to it. And so for the pages that have the 3-inch pocket, they will have one 3-inch pocket and then one 2-inch pocket. And I'm just going to do them like that, and then I'm going to stitch them on. But I am going to use a little bit of fabric tack to attach them first, and then I will stitch them on, because I really think they're going to slide around if I don't. So let's add just a little glue. We just want to add just a little line here of glue, just enough to hold it along the edge there, and just a little bit on this side to hold it along the edge. And then I'm just going to attach it at the very bottom there, and I'm keeping it off my fold line where my book folds up, because it would make it way too thick and this wouldn't bend very well either. So then I'm just going to attach it like that. And I'm going to go ahead and attach this pocket here as well. And I'm spacing them out so that you can put your ephemera in this. And this will hold your small ephemera, the small pieces. And I think this will hold quite a bit. And if you want to, you could add more pages to yours. I decided that this was the right amount for what I was making this for. I'm making this for a friend, and I want to give her something small that she can keep with her, because she likes bullet journal and she does a lot of planning, and so this way she could keep this in her bag with her bullet journal, I believe. And because when she bullet journals, she adds she's adding ephemera and things to her pages, and this would hold it for her so that she could actually keep it with her, and she could have her stickers or whatnot with her. So as these have laid on the counter for just a few minutes, they're gathering dust from the fabric that I tore to go on the edge. So for this page, I am adding the 1 1/2 inch pockets, and so I can space those out, and I'm trying to evenly space them so that they look good on here. And then, like, again, I'm just going to glue them just a little bit until I can sew them. Okay, so we're back to the sewing machine, and hopefully you can see, and I know there's a mess in the back, but it's all part of this project we're working on. So overlook the mess. When I'm working on a project, it gets kind of messy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch around 3 sides of each pocket, and I've decided that I'm going to use a zigzag stitch, and I have actually tested on another one, and so that's where I always test first to make sure what I want. And so I got to remember what place to place it. Make sure I got my pages right side up and everything's ready to go. And let me see, got my strings here. And hopefully you can kind of see what I'm doing. So here we go. Let's see here. And like I said, if you are not sewing, then you're probably going to want to use some double-sided tape on yours, or you're going to want to use a lot of glue, but you're also going to want to be sure that you use glue on 3 sides, because when I glued mine down, I only glued 2 sides, and the reason for that was because I was planning on sewing, and so I didn't feel that I just needed to glue the bottom one. I just wanted enough glue to hold my pocket in place until I could get to the sewing machine. And then when I was sewing, I didn't want it to pucker up and not lay flat, so that's why I glued it. So let's see how that looks. Looks pretty good. So I'm just going to cut these strings. Okay. Then I'm just going to sew the next pocket, and so I'm just going to do that. And as you can see, I stitched around the little zigzag stitch, and I'm just going to do that around every pocket. Okay, so I did one page using zigzags, and I've decided, since I did that page, that I wanted to try doing straight stitches, so I am straight stitching these pockets for this page, and I think each page could be different. I don't think it has to all be the same, but I'm really enjoying the straight stitch on it better. I like the looks of it, but I also think it's easier to sew the corners and different parts of it using the straight stitch. So if you're new to sewing, I think I would go with the straight stitch for this project. And I'm not new to sewing as far as fabric goes, but I am fairly new over the last, since I got this machine, I guess the last November, December, whenever I got it, I can't remember. But that's when I started sewing paper. So I am fairly new to sewing paper, so, but I'm not new to sewing with the sewing machine because I've had one for years, and so done quilting and other sewing projects. But I would say if you're new to sewing, you're probably going to want to do the straight stitch. And I'm thinking the straight stitch is a lot quicker too, and it looks just as good. I was thinking the zigzag stitch may need to cover my glue, but I don't think so finally. I don't think it's showing up that much. So now I have stitched around the cover on 3 sides for the back and 3 sides for the front, and I'm going to stitch this later, so I'm leaving it. And I've stitched around my little decorative piece that was going on the front. And so now I have also stitched on all of my little acetate pockets. And so for most pages I did use the straight stitch because I did the zigzag on one page, and what I found with the zigzag stitch was it's really hard to do the corners. And the other thing was, because you've got such a small piece, you're not going for long. The other thing that I found was hard was you can't really back stitch, and so I was concerned that as you're reaching into the pocket to get your things out, that it may come loose. So the way I remedied that, how am I saying that? The way I fixed that is that I went ahead and put some Fabri-Tac glue on the ends of each of the start and stops, just to be certain that it doesn't come loose. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the pages. So I'm going to take the pages and I'm going to glue them together back to back. So that one will be back to back, and then this one will be back to back. And so that way the pages are double thickness, and I've already got to stitch around my pockets before. So that's why I stitch around my pockets before I glue them. And so I'm just going to use my Bearly Art Glue for this, and because I want to get a good seal on these pages, because I'm not going to stitch around these pages once I put them together. Reason being, if I do, I put my acetate, because of the size of the book, I didn't want to cut the acetate down. I just wanted to chop it off the roll like I showed you. And so if I stitch around the edges, it's going to stitch through my acetate again. And I think too much stitching on paper could cause it to tear, and I'm afraid it'll cause these pockets to have enough stitching in them that maybe they will tear loose too. So I don't want that to happen. So I think that just gluing them together, I'm just going to add a good layer of glue around the edge here where the stitching is. And so I'm just going to And I'm just going to add some glue to those stitches right there on the edge, and then I'm just going to glue around the whole page. And you do want to put some glue on the stitches, because if you look, the stitches are raised up higher than the rest of the page. So if you add glue there, at least it will have something to grab a hold of as well. So let's just see here. Just making sure I'm getting lots of glue on those bottom stitches as well, because I want it to really grasp a hold of the paper. So I'm just going to add glue all in the middle now. Just getting lots of glue, and I just got off on my mat. Just gluing all around. Just want to be sure that I get a good seal with these two pages together. And I think that's going to be really good. And so I'm just attaching, oh, and make sure that you've got it right side up. This one is right side up, and this one is right side up. And so you don't want to attach them with your pockets upside down. That would be a big problem. Nothing would stay in. So now I'm just going to press and press. There we go. Just pressing everything really good so that it just sticks together so good. There we go. And before I fold it, I'm just going to take and I am going to let it dry, and then I'll fold the pages. And while it's drying, I'll just glue the next page. So I'm just adding glue on all the sides. And it's not, you could have all, I'm using some of the background papers for some of my pages, but you could use all decorative the papers if you wanted. I just chose the ones that I liked and that I wanted in my book. And I probably could have used some double-sided tape for this too, but I really like this glue, and I mainly use liquid glue. For some reason, I really like it. Maybe it's a habit, but I do like it. So now, make sure my pockets are right side up. I can tell on the back here when I sewed them, they are. And so these are two. So we're just going to press these two pages together. Just lining up the corners, line up the top, and then the bottom. There we go. And just press it down and make sure everything's lined up. Just press it down. I think I'll get my little, this would actually probably work better if I press with it. Let's just do the other side as well. And I do have a little white showing at the bottom here, so I think what I'll do, make sure there's no plastic there. I'm just going to trim that off just a little right there. Make sure I'm not cutting into my stitches. You don't want to cut into none of your stitches. But if just look and make sure it's just a little bit of paper hanging down. When I cut stuff, I'm not perfect at cutting. So that will fix it just fine. And do I see any of the white? Maybe just a little right here. There we go. And there's a hanging string. Okay. So now while this one's gluing itself drying, I'm going to work on folding this one in half. Just going to fold there. Just going to press it down. And I better put the pen in my glue or it'll be totally dried out by the time I get back to it. Okay, so now we just fold this one. And then we're just going to hand stitch these together just using like you would a journal, stitch a journal together, just using three holes. So here's our cover. And so then I got to decide which one do I want to be the first page in my book and make sure I got them right side up. Everything is, yes. So do I want the rose first or that first? I think I'm going to do the rose first in the book, then like this, and here we'll have a little ephemera holder. So I want to go ahead and just find my clips, and I'm going to clip it together. So this is tiny enough, I may only need 2 of these. So got that like that. Make sure, I'm just trying to make sure all my pockets are right side up and everything is like it's supposed to be. And everything is. So now I'm just going to line these up. And then we're going to put them in the book. You just want to center it. Put it right there. Because the pages, I cut the pages shorter. So I did cut these, and I'm going to have a cut list below, but I cut them at 8 1/4 instead of 8 1/2 like the regular pages. Well, like the cover, excuse me. So the pages are cut at 8 1/4 by 6 3/4, and then the cover is cut at 8 1/2 by 6 3/4. So now I'm going to just do it like this. Let me get my tool here, and then I'm just going to making sure everything's lined up like I want it before I poke the holes, because once I poke the holes there's no going back. And so I'm just going to eyeball the center here. There we go. Just make it big enough my needle can go through, and then I'm just going to eyeball the next spot. Okay, let me get my tool in there. And then, so I'm doing about 1 inch from the bottom. So from the top, so I'll do about 1 inch from the, and there we have it. So now, let's thread our needle. I'm just using some wax thread that I have. And I'm just going to, normally I just use cotton thread and I wax it myself, but this is some I already had that was wax thread, so I'm just going to use it today. And I'm going to sew this up. So let's just go through the hole here. Then back through this one. And then I like to go up to the top here. And then I come right back through the middle and tighten it all up first. Okay, and then you can just pull it tight. Still at this point, as long as you didn't, oops, did you see that? I've wrapped my thread around my clip. That's okay, because you can still tighten your threads. So you just tighten it. Pull both the threads tight, and then I'm going to tie them. Just want to check, make sure it is tight. I'm just going to tie them right here in the center, and I'll tie 2 or 3 knots in it. And then I'm just going to tie a little bow for now until I make a decision what I want to do with the center. That's what I always do until I make a decision how I want to do this. Let me take a look here. Okay, so that's looking good. So I kind of wanted to put a piece of fabric down the center, but since I made the pocket so close, I'm not sure that's going to work. But I am going to add the fabric on the outside, and I went ahead and I cut a piece for that. Just looking to see how this is coming together. Okay, so I'm just going to clip this right there and right there. Okay, so I'm just going to open it up like this, hold it flat, and I'm just using some muslin. And let me see if this piece is long enough. I may have to get another piece. That looks like it will be. Just trying to keep it from gathering up. Okay, so there, we're going to add some Fabri-Tac to the center here first. And then I'm going to add this, trim all the little extras off. I'm just going to center it up here. Press it down. Then I'm just going to add, I'm looking here, I may want to, let me see, is that going to be too much on that side? No, I like that. So now we're just going to add a little bit more glue down the edge here. And add our fabric. And I like to just slowly glue it like that, adding just a little bit at a time and pressing down so that I'm getting it smooth. And I like this fabric on things like this. So let me just add just a little bit more right here. And there we go. Got that one side done. Then here. And I'm leaving the ragged edges. I want the edges to be ragged like that. And they'll quit raveling once, you know, if it hits the glue spot, it's going to quit raveling. So I'm just going to add a little glue down here just so it doesn't ravel up too far past our book page or book cover. And make sure I got enough glue right along the edge of the book here. There we go. So there we have our covers. We're just going to fold it up now and just pressing it down. And what I had originally thought was I wanted to sew here. What I can still do that. What you would do is you just hold your page open and sew so that you didn't sew onto your pages. And I'm trying to decide now because I really just like the raggedness of this fabric, and I'm not so sure that I want to sew it. I don't know that I want the stitches there now. I kind of like how it looks. To stitch yours, all you have to do is you just need to open it up and be sure that when you run it through your machine that your pages are out of the way. And you may even want to clip them out of the way and then just stitch down. But I really like how it looks without the stitching. I like that this is stitched, but I do like how the fabric is not. I really love how this turned out, and I think it's going to make a great gift. And now I think I'm going to have to make myself one because I definitely could use it. I have ephemera laying around everywhere. I have them in boxes and I dig through it. So I'm thinking I'm going to have to get started on one for myself. And so I hope that you enjoyed this project. And if you try to make this project, please tag me on Instagram or on Facebook. On Instagram, you would tag at makincraftsstudio, and then on Facebook, I am Making Crafts Studio. I think if you search either one of those, you'll find me. And you can post it on my page. I will be posting the video link on that page, on my Facebook page. And so you can actually share in the comments below the video. You can share yours or that you make. And I would love to see if you create one of these. And thank you so much for watching. And I hope you have a great day. Bye.